the recording.
Okay.
So now you're on.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm looking for Adobe Photoshop here. All right. Do y'all have your pictures open? And can y'all see the little girl on my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. I can see a long line of people here. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my background layer over here on the right. And I like this little keyboard shortcut, Control J. That if I just combine those two keystrokes and hit them at the same time, it'll make a new layer. And I'm making two new layers. I'm going to call the middle layer color. And what I did was I double left clicked on this little tiny spot right here so that I could rename it. And this one up here, I'm going to call texture. Let me put my glasses on. I can't quite see that very well. There we go. Now they call it frequency separation because the color layer is the low frequency and the texture layer is the high frequency. And the texture, they call it high frequency because it has a lot of bumps and ridges. It has all the texture in the image in it. Whereas the color layer is the colors of the image. So right now we're going to the color layer and we want to go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Can everybody find that? And then I'm going to turn Gaussian blur to 6.6 or so. What we're wanting to do here is we're wanting to blur the image a little bit, but we don't want to lose all the detail. We just want to lose some detail like eyelashes and eyebrows and things like that. So about 6.6 is about all you need. And then I'm going to go up to the texture layer. I'm going to hit image, apply image. It's like 2/3 of the way down here in the image menu. And the first field here that says source, you just want to make sure that it's this picture, which it always is. Now the second field that says layer, you actually want to say color. Did somebody have a question? Okay. And then for the blending field right here, we're going to hit subtract. And since we hit subtract, we want scale to be 2 and we want offset to be 128. I'm going to hit OK. And then for the texture layer over here, I'm going to change the blending mode to linear light. Now, if you were to combine the texture layer with the color layer, you would have exactly what the background layer looks like. Just interesting little fact there.
Hey,
Yeah.
Hey, Melissa, what blending layer did we choose?
For the texture layer, you choose linear light.
I'm seeing linear dodge and burn.
It's
Oh, I see it. I see it. About 2/3.
yeah, it's the fourth menu down.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I decided when I was editing this picture that I really didn't like all this messy hair all over her arm. So I zoomed in and I could see all sorts of things on her arm. I could see all these little tiny dots. So I decided to get rid of those too. And my favorite way of getting rid of things is the rubber stamp tool. Now I'm going to show you what happens if you just use the rubber stamp tool and you try to fix something. Y'all have probably used this before. I'm going to turn the opacity to 100%. But sometimes when you choose the rubber stamp tool and you go over a section, your shading doesn't match, you know? And if you try to blend the shading, like if I lowered the opacity of the rubber stamp tool and I tried to, let's say I tried to blend some shading right here, it'll start looking mushy. It'll start looking blurry and soft. You see how we lose the texture and the detail in there? It's because I used the rubber stamp tool and I used it on less than 100% opacity. This technique that I'm about to show you actually works better than the rubber stamp tool. Whoops. So I'm going to go back, redo all these steps again. Looking for apply image. There we go. It's still on the color layer. It's still 2 and 128, still on subtract. And then linear light. Okay. So what I'm going to do instead is I am going to be on the texture layer. I'm going to take my rubber stamp tool. I'm going to raise the opacity to 100% because what I'm doing is I'm copying texture and some shading. But really, I'm copying smooth skin over this bump. Now, there's a little bit of color there, I see. You see the little bit of redness there that shouldn't be there? So I'm going to go to my color layer. And usually you have to lower the opacity on the color layer for some reason, because I think it's because the shading is missing. So if you copy the color at 100%, a lot of times it looks too saturated and it looks wrong. So I start out with about 22, 30% opacity, and I copy the color with the rubber stamp, and that blends it in very nicely. I'm going to go back to the texture layer and I'm going to get rid of these bumps. And you can pretend that I did all that and smoothed out all the skin. And this is really cool, okay? It might not start out looking cool, but it really works. So I'm going to copy the skin texture, just the texture, from here to here. And it kind of gets rid of the hair. And I don't have to be real careful with it. That's the really nice part. Because I'm not trying to copy any shading at all. I'm just copying texture.
But you can still see some lines there. You're gonna get rid of those.
Yep. I'm going to show you what happens here in a second. The more I show you, the more you'll be amazed at this. Right now, I'm not amazing you yet. Okay, so now I'm going back to my color layer. And I'm going back to my rubber stamp tool. I'm lowering the opacity. And now I'm copying pure color up here. See, I'm just taking the surrounding areas and I'm copying the color over where the hair was.
Mhm.
And it looks like I could probably raise my opacity a little because it's not working real fast. But if I had tried to copy all the shading in her arm up here, it would have been a pain.
Mhm.
I've done it enough times to know. So look at that, it's pretty smooth.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how I got rid of the hairs on her arm. Let me see if I can show you. This is the after I did all the touching up on her. It's pretty clean.
Yes.
Amazing.
Oh, just wait. I have more. Okay, so this is awesome. I go back to my color layer and she's got some dark circles under her eyes, I think.
We have impact.
Sorry? Oh,
Asteroid.
asteroid. I'm listening to millions of dollars being blown up right now. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lower my opacity to about 30%. I'm going to soften the hardness on my brush. And I like to copy from, okay, go away now. There. I like to copy from a smooth area like the forehead or something like that. Y'all know how to use rubber stamp, right? Everybody knows how to do that?
You're saying rubber stamp, is that the same as clone stamp?
Yes, yes. In fact, I'm calling it the wrong thing. So yes, it's the clone tool. So I want to make sure everybody's on board. Okay. So I'm selecting from here. I'm copying from here on her forehead, and I'm just going underneath here and copying under her eye. And you see, it didn't get rid of her eyelashes or anything like that. It didn't disturb the texture of her skin, but it enhanced the color. I'll go back a couple steps and you'll be able to see it. There's the dark circles back under her eyes. And there it is gone. I overdid it a little bit,
That's
I
good.
think. But yeah, it's awesome. Now, a lot of people, when they do high-end retouching, they go to the color layer and they take the lasso tool and they'll take a whole section of face like this. Now, she doesn't need all that, but I'm going to show
Hey,
you
don't
what it
mess
does
with her
anyway.
freckles. Those are cute.
Oh, I love her freckles, but her freckles are probably on the texture layer because some of the darker shading does reside in the texture layer. I'm not sure why. Sometimes you really have to play with this to figure out where something lives.
Yeah.
But the freckles should be on the top layer. So what we're doing is we're selecting a section of her face and we're going to smooth out some of the skin pigments and shadows on her face. It's kind of smooths out the planes of the face a little bit. So we're on the color layer and we've lassoed a section of face and we go back to Gaussian blur 6.6 and we blur again. I'm going to show you what that does. Just softens a little. Where I
Yeah.
can really see it is on her chin. I noticed that she had some dark areas right here, some redness. I don't know if it's a scar or what it is, but I went in here like this. And right now I'm just smoothing out the color pigments. That's all I'm doing. I'm not disturbing the texture of her skin right now. So I'm back on the color layer still. I've taken a section of her chin. I went under Gaussian blur 6.6 again. And I smoothed it out a little. And this is cool. So what I'm going to do now, I still see some shading, some darkness here. So what I'm going to do is go into the texture layer now, go back to my clone tool at 100%, make my clone tool smaller. And I'm just going to copy texture in from the surrounding areas where it's not so dark. And I'm going to smooth out this little area on her chin. I mean, you can really go overboard with this. And you typically don't want to do that on somebody unless it's high-end fashion, but you get the point. You can fix a lot of stuff with this. So I'm just going nearby and I'm copying good textures from elsewhere. Yeah, I think the color could be smoothed out a little bit more. So I'm going to go back on the color layer. I'm going to lower my opacity a little bit. Use my clone tool. I'm going to copy a little tiny bit of lighter color from there. A little bit of color from the chin down there. And I'll show you the before and the after. So there's her chin before. There's her chin now.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
It's great.
It's crazy. And her chin looks great.
Wait, do that again, please.
Which part?
Showing me the chin part, because I was writing something when you were talking.
Okay.
I missed it.
Okay. I'll show you the chin before. There we go. See all the dark?
Oh,
It
yeah.
looks like scarring maybe, possibly.
Splotches. Yeah, skin splotches.
And then this is after.
Or a little chocolate cake didn't get off.
And I'm going to just show you something real quick here on the texture layer. I can go back to my lovely clone tool here at 100%. Make my clone tool a lot smaller. And because there's not really much shading underneath this hair, it really wipes out the hair quickly.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
still see a little. So I could go back in with my color layer. Because I think there's a little more shading than what I thought. I can see it.
Now it's almost gone.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you would never know it. The texture of her skin is pretty good, you know?
Yep, that's good.
Yep. Now I'm going to show you something else. Let's see. Bras. Has anybody else dealt with this? I hate how the edge of the bra sticks up like that. It's terrible. So I'm going to go through my process again. Control J to make new layers, or you can, I think it's this one. Yeah. Nope, that's layer mask. You can come down here. There it is. It's the square with the plus in it. That creates a new layer as well. But I'm going into my middle layer. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur at 6.6. I'm going to call that color. You don't have to name it. I'm just being really clear if I can be. And then top layer is texture. And we do image, apply image. And it says merged in here in the layer, and we don't want that. We want color. We want subtract for blending, 2 and 128. All good. And then for the blending mode over here, we want linear light. So this is cool. I'm going to come back to my clone tool. I'm going to go 50% or so on my opacity. And soften my edges. Make this thing bigger. There we go. That's about right. So what I'm doing is I'm on the color layer right now. I'm not on the texture layer. The texture of her sweater resides in the texture layer. But right now I'm just dealing with the color and the shading. So I'm going to copy from down here. I'm hitting Alt and I'm copying the shadows up here a little bit. And then I'm copying from up here and putting it down there. Now I'm probably going a little fast. I probably need to lower my opacity and make it a little smoother. I can also try doing this. Now I'm going to show you what happens if I use Gaussian blur and I use it too high. It looks pretty bad. It blends it too much. So I don't really want to do that. I want to keep it around 6 or so. I can definitely do a better job. And smooth out the texture here a little bit, the shading rather. And all I'm doing is I've lowered the opacity on my clone tool and I'm smoothing out the shading. I'm putting a little bit of shadow up higher and I'm putting a little bit of highlight down lower, wherever I need to go to make it smooth. That's a little bit of a clumsy job. It could be better. But if I zoom in, you'll see that the texture of her sweater is not disturbed at all. It was a whole lot easier than trying to clone it and rubber stamp it and shade it that way, you know, the normal way. You know what I mean?
yeah.
How did you learn all this stuff? Just by practice and trial and error, or?
Yeah, I figured it out. Because I watched a tutorial about frequency separation, but he didn't talk about clothing and stuff like that. But this kid's shirt, I mean, these are family pictures and look at his shirt. He had all these wrinkles in it. I thought, gosh, there's got to be a way to smooth this out. So the fact that I can preserve texture in the top layer and smooth out color underneath it is just amazing to me, you know, because you can kind of blend the colors together on the color layer right here. Go back in the textures. Copy this texture up here from down here. It really helps smooth away the wrinkles. You know, you got to work at it a little bit, but but it's still easier than clone tool.
Easier than ironing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I guess so.
Ironing after the fact. Listen,
Exactly. So right now I'm copying from a smooth area and I'm copying over the wrinkle. Whoops, I just added a wrinkle. It's looking a little fuzzy. I kind of wonder if having my clone tool soft is adding to the fuzziness there, because I do see a little bit of fuzziness. I'm wondering if hardening the tool would help. Or if it's just a natural factor of part of the picture being slightly out of focus or something like that. That seems to be working better. I mean, you can see this kid's shirt, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a web copy. That's not good. I can't zoom in that much. That's a lower resolution copy for web so that they can put it on social media. Oops, or open the wrong one. Okay. So let's see. I wanted to show you, we had a picture that was really difficult of a lady where her makeup did not match her skin at all. Okay. She has these patches of makeup on top of her skin. You see that? Whoops, sorry,
oops.
trigger happy. All right. So this was actually able to help quite a bit. Image, apply image. All right, so first of all, her skin tones. Now some of these things on her skin up here, we were able to get rid of just using the texture layer. The texture layer seems to be good for getting rid of dark spots. I don't know why that is. I'm going to go back in here and see if I can smooth out some of the skin tones this way. And it also does soften some of the wrinkles too, because it does do some of the shading just a little bit. Oh, I want to show y'all something else. These little hairs around her mouth. I should apologize to this woman. I'm so sorry. I'm sure she wouldn't be mortified, but I'm using my clone tool. Go away. And it just makes it so easy to get rid of little hairs like this. Because you're just copying texture from somewhere else on her skin that's clean, you know? Getting rid of all these little hairs. Now for really deep wrinkles, what you can do, I'm using my clone tool again, and I'm still on the texture layer. I'm going to keep the brush rather small because I don't want to make it too obvious that I'm getting rid of her wrinkles. I'm just trying to soften them a little. I don't know that I even want to do that much. Maybe lower the opacity just a little. And just go over the top. Make it really subtle. Make it really small so that people can't really see it. I'm just going along that wrinkle on her face and just softening it a little bit. So we've touched up a little bit around here. See if I can show you what it looked like before. Yep. What it looks like now. A little bit softer.
Yeah.
So
And the makeup-
Melissa, just for comparison, if you were to go to her left side or her actual right side and go into the color layer, lasso it and blur it instead of softening the texture, can you do that for comparison?
I didn't follow all that. Can you repeat that?
Sure. Go to the color layer.
Mhm.
Lasso her left side, the fold that you just smoothened, the opposite side of it.
You want me to lasso this side of her face?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, and then go to Gaussian blur
Uh-huh.
and do 25.
Ugh.
Oh, maybe it's too much. Okay.
Mhm.
Something like that. Maybe 12. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't want her to look like plastic.
Chandler, you are listening, right?
So click OK.
Yeah, the word of the evening is subtle.
Right. So what I'm trying to see the difference between is her left side and right side now. One looks sharper, but less, I guess, deep versus looking smoother.
The wrinkle?
Yeah, the wrinkle.
Yeah, I haven't softened this one yet. I did that.
I know. That's on purpose. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're just pointing it out.
Well, I'm just looking at the two different options.
Okay. Yeah, up here, we had a time with this, didn't we? Let me see if I've still got something selected. It doesn't look like I do. I had to lower the opacity on the texture layer to try to smooth some of the makeup away because it was very blotchy. It wasn't blended in. And you could see it like on top of her skin. And to try to copy an area from her eyelid when there's so many wrinkles, it was kind of difficult. So what I ended up doing with this area was lowering the opacity of my cloning tool and just smoothing over the makeup a little bit. And then of course, I can go back in with my clone tool, or I can also use my paintbrush. Let's soften this. I don't necessarily want 100% on my paintbrush either because skin tones aren't 100% the same. But what I'm going to do here is I'm pushing the Alt key to get a dropper tool from this area. And I've got about 28 opacity here. And I'm just going to kind of, yeah, that's too much, I think. I'm just trying to blend the colors because I still can see that where the makeup is very yellow. So right now I'm trying to blend in the color of the makeup that doesn't match with the color of her natural skin tone. And I just can't help myself. I'm going to do the Gaussian blur on her eyelid because I think it'll look good. There we go. Yeah, that looks nice. I mean, look at one eyelid compared to the other.
Mhm.
The makeup is cleaned up quite a bit. Let's see if I can go back. Yeah, see all the splotchy makeup there? And now it's pretty cleaned up. But that's one thing I like about this too. If you see how red her skin is down here, this is another thing we can try to do when makeup doesn't match the neck. In this case, what I would want to do is get rid of some of the redness in her skin on her neck. I had another lady that we photographed at the library and her neck looked very sunburned, her whole chest and neck. So I took a sample from her face and I lowered the opacity. I used my paintbrush. Whoop, okay, too much.
Well, it shows how it works then.
Oh yeah, you could definitely see how it worked.
Mhm.
You got to be subtle with it and play with it, that's for sure.
And would you normally get rid of that little mole there she's got on her neck, or just leave that?
No, that's part of who she is. I think she'd
Yeah.
be upset if I got rid of that.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll get rid of zits and stuff like that, but if somebody's got a mole, I pretty much leave it. If it's really bothersome, I might lower my opacity on my clone tool and just fade it a little bit, but
Right,
it is part of who they are, and I think it's probably wrong to get rid of it completely.
yeah.
So does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to see if it works on something?
No, I'm good.
Is that as clear as mud?
Yeah.
No, I thought it was really good, Melissa. I appreciated what you did. I think doing any touch-ups really at a minimum is a big deal, because it's not only the integrity of the person and who they are, but you kind of lose you lose a little bit of three-dimensionality.
Yeah, you have to be very careful.
Yeah, like you can lose where chins and necks meet,
Mhm.
and you know there's a trade-off with it.
Yeah. If I lightened up her underneath the chin too much, what I could do is come back in and add some shadow just a little bit under there. Cause I did think that it lightened up a little.
Mhm.
So sometimes I have given people a little bit of a, nice chin lift at times. That's another thing you can do with this technique actually is smooth out some neck wrinkles and things like that.
Well, it's interesting, the things that you notice on a woman's face is completely different than the things I would notice on a woman's face.
Yeah. What's that?
Everything you said,
Okay.
if women knew what you see when you see their face compared to what I see when I see their face.
Well, just talking to her, I probably wouldn't notice all that stuff. It's just because she's holding still and I'm zoomed way in. I mean, good grief.
Yeah.
Well, photographers do see faces different than just, ordinary people, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Nose hairs and things like that just stand out like neon lights,
Yeah. Yep.
I may not be good for nose hairs. Some of
Do
us got more hair coming out our noses than our head,
Maybe you could get a transplant.
Good idea.
So Melissa, if I can back you up just a little bit.
Yeah.
You said that you figured this all out on your own. You kind of had to piece it together.
Hmm.
And what you've got here really, really works.
Hmm.
It's a little bit different. It's a little almost convoluted, but it works. And I'm curious about it. So before you caught on to this trickery, what were you doing that was not satisfactory that made you go and figure all this out?
Clone, because the cloning tool, you have to have something nearby that exactly matches the shading and the texture of what you're trying to fix. And it can be an absolute nightmare if you don't have much of anything to work with. If you have a tiny little area, let's say I was trying to fix some grass in here and I had very little grass to work with. I mean, what happens is you form a pattern because the pixels end up repeating over and over and over again. You keep having to choose the same pixels, and yeah, you can kind of mix it up and do a couple dots here and then select from over here and do a couple dots there, and goodness knows I've done that. But this, I mean, to be able to just smooth that out so quickly and smooth out skin pigments so quickly and get rid of hair so easily without having to worry about the shading on her arm, just to copy pure texture from one place to another. That's amazing.
It's definitely a very effective technique that you figured out. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I was even able to get rid of some wrinkles on her dress too. Obviously I didn't get rid of them all of them, but.
So are you selling this technique yet?
No.
You
You got some way to monetize this?
There's a way.
You probably can. You probably can.
I'm sure if I had a YouTube channel, but good grief, I don't have time for a YouTube channel. Who
Right.
does?
Lord, right.
All right,
So now-
I'm gonna be the dumb one in the group. Go way back to the beginning and explain to
Okay.
me how you could get a texture layer and a color layer.
Okay.
And yeah, for me too.
Okay.
I've
And for
been
me too.
smiling and nodding, but I didn't get the layers set up. So
Okay.
Melissa has an action for that she's selling.
Oh,
Whoa.
Yes, actually, you can make it into an action. I just prefer to do it over and over again so that I know how to do it. You know what I mean?
mhm.
I'd rather just know.
Well, do it over and over again so I know how to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got my
So-
picture up now, and I've got two Control J. I've got two copies.
Okay. Okay.
Start from there.
Yep. You go to the layers palette and you go to background. You hit Control
Oh, yeah,
J
gotcha.
twice. That's just the
Right.
fastest way I know how to do it.
Yep.
And then you go to the middle layer, which is actually layer 1.
Mhm.
And just for clarity's sake, I'm going to call it color.
Okay.
Oh, so you just
What-
name the
what-
two and after you name it, that's what they are.
Well, you have to do things to them.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
So right now I'm working with the color layer, which is the middle layer. And I'm going up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And then I have my Gaussian blur set to about 6.6.
Okay,
And I hit OK. And
Oh,
that's
I
what's
see.
on the middle layer there, is the
Okay.
Gaussian blur.
I got you. Okay.
Sorry
that's
about that.
Yep. Just for those of us who are slow.
No. This is
Gaussian
complicated.
blur.
So you're,
Okay.
you're
And you
calling
wanna-
it the color layer, but but you're applying blur to it.
Yes, it's maybe I should call it the Gaussian blur layer, but I think of it as the color layer because that's where I smooth the pigments out and some of the shading.
And you
Okay.
named it color just because that suited your thinking about the image.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
Okay.
the low
The name is
frequency.
not.
Yeah, it's
Okay, what
it's when
about the
I'm
next-
smoothing colors together.
Right.
okay, how
And
about the
then-
texture
Well, that's
layer then?
cool.
What do you
So
have
that's
to do
the
to
low
that?
frequency.
Sorry?
What's
So-
that layer there? Layer 1 copy, what's that?
Layer 1 copy, I just call it texture.
Okay,
That's where your hair lives. That's where the severe wrinkles can live sometimes.
Now, the way you got the Gaussian blur, do you do anything to that one, the texture layer?
No, texture
Okay.
layer is completely, once you're on the texture layer, you go to image, apply image. And you get this apply image palette. And the first field says source, and it should be the same name as the image that you have open.
Okay.
That's what the
Okay.
source
Gotcha, okay.
field should say. And then the second one, the field that says, I'm getting
Oh.
tired, y'all. The second field that says layer should say color,
so
because
the layers are where the texture, the color, and what was the third?
yeah, that's where they live. The top
Okay.
layer is where the texture lives. The middle layer that says color is where the color lives, and it's the blur.
And the third layer was,
The background layer is just the image where we started.
okay.
These are,
Okay.
the layers are just copies of the image that we have kind of taken apart and
Click
separated.
that drop down button on the layer.
What do you mean?
Just show all 3 items that are in there. Click on the drop down button. Click on that box that says color.
Okay,
Okay, now we see, okay, texture, color, and background. Okay.
yep. We want to subtract the color layer. So that's what goes there, and subtract goes down here.
Why do
Now,
you subtract?
Mine's not showing that.
Oh, what is yours showing?
Mine, it says layer and then a colon, and then there's the black box for the texture, not for the text rather. And so it pops up saying merged. But then if
Yeah,
I
you
do
don't
the
want
black-
color or merged. You want, well, right now mine says color because I have colors selected. but you don't want merged. You want whatever the name of this second layer is, because you're subtracting the second layer from the top layer. That's what you're doing.
Mhm.
Okay, I got you. I got you.
Yeah, that's why we're hitting subtract here in blending.
Okay.
This is a weird thing, y'all. It doesn't make sense to me. I just know how to do it.
It just
Don't
works,
ask me
huh?
to explain it. Yes, I don't know how to.
It's all about layers, and that's what it is.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, there's the subtract. All right, so subtract, and then anything else to affect there? The opacity?
Yeah, make sure that your scale is set at 2 and your offset is set at 128.
How'd you
Okay.
get those numbers?
They taught them
Wow.
to me. I have no idea.
Okay.
Now, offset has to do with medium gray. The scale probably has some mathematical thing, but I don't know what.
Somebody taught you that.
Yeah, I watched a tutorial video on how to do frequency separation. It was made by Pix Imperfect, and he showed the techniques of smoothing out the skin tones on the face. And I liked what he did. So I started playing with it, and that's how I figured out to get rid of wrinkles in clothing and to get rid of hair and things like that.
Excellent.
So he's the one that taught us, what the scale and the offset should be, the second layer, what it should be, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I didn't figure that part out at all. There's
And-
no way I would figure that out.
And with this one, we're not messing around with the opacity.
That's correct. It's set at 100%.
That's all we're doing with the apply image. Not that that's not enough, but okay. I'm taking a screenshot of the other computer so I can
Oh, let me pull it
hopefully
back down then.
remember. Oh, no, I was taking a screenshot of my computer. So,
Okay.
all right.
Is this
Okay.
a good way to get rid of gray hair in a photo?
I would not think so unless it's going across their face or something like that. Like if they have a stray hair across their face, then it's a fantastic way to get rid of that. But I assume you're talking about adding color to gray hair, correct?
Yes.
Oh, that's difficult because the problem is when you are changing colors on something, you have shading there, you have depth, you have darkness. And the problem with gray hair is that it's very close to white, which means you don't have much tonality there that you can change. There's not much information there that you can change. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's
it does.
close to white.
Well, depending on where it lies, you can do the stone clone stamp, set it to darken, and then choose from the dark hair areas to go over the gray. And it might, it just depends on where it lies and what's around it, but it can work.
You're making
Okay.
me wonder if somebody like me had normal color hair, but then their gray roots were showing,
Mhm.
I wonder if we could do this technique and copy from the color layer over to the gray.
Mine-
You
Good
see what I'm
question.
saying?
Worth playing with.
Yeah, I don't have any pictures. Well, wait a minute. She doesn't really have gray hair, but okay, let's try it anyway. You
just
got me
change it to
curious.
something else.
Well, I'm thinking if you get a photo of Philo, she may be able to get gray hair.
Not much. You'll have to get
You
a
can get nothing but
macro
gray hair from
photography.
mine.
Have to get a side view.
macro photography
Amanda,
is in play.
it might
No,
help a
It'd be
little.
easier with me.
I think Rick would be a better choice. Yeah.
I make it easier for you.
Huh. Let me try something else.
Yeah, I got a request from my sister-in-law and she just has a teeny tiny bit at the front near the scalp.
Uh-huh.
But,
That would be tricky.
Yeah, I didn't want to ruin the texture,
Right.
just darken the color a touch.
She needs a new
Well-
hairdresser.
Sorry?
She needs a new
You are
hairdresser.
changing the color.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm painting, you know what? Am I in normal mode? I am in normal mode. I'm on the color layer of this
Okay.
and I'm hitting Alt with my paintbrush and I'm selecting a color from over here and I'm painting over here. And
Oh,
it is
yeah.
darkening it a little.
Mhm.
Let me,
Do that.
you know what? That's only 10%. Let's really play here for a second.
Ooh.
There's some dark hair in that shadow there.
Yeah.
Amanda. You might want to
Make
keep
mine
it
blonde and I'll
subtle.
volunteer.
Do what?
So you make mine blonde and I'll volunteer. This is all gray.
That
You
image,
gotta have something to copy from.
that thing is super sharp too. How many pixels are you shooting with?
Oh, I don't even know. I know that some of my images are like 80 megapixels.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane.
Well, I was noticing when you zoom down the hair, it's like, holy cow, that stuff is sharp.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
detail is crazy.
What kind
I
of
bought
camera?
this camera
you're
for
working with?
product photography. Do what?
What kind is it? Is it phase one or?
It's a
What kind of
Canon
camera?
50D.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
No,
tell the
5DS. I'm
user.
sorry, 5DS. I'm not a tech geek. My husband knows more about my camera than I do. He does the research. I don't have the patience or I can't sit still that long
You
to
got
do
the
the
ad.
research.
Oh, you changed that color, didn't you?
Yeah,
Oh, look at that.
that's paintbrush set to, what is it? That's only 18%.
Huh, do 50, see what happens.
Okay.
Wow.
I think it's a little,
Little too
I don't
brown.
think it looks real
Flattening
because
it,
it's burying
flattening
all
it.
the
And
highlights and shadows and everything and
technique's
making
there.
things too even. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I think
flattening
it's got to be more subtle. But maybe you can select from different areas in the hair. I don't know. Get a more natural look.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm messing with a highlight. I'm not really messing with gray. She doesn't really actually have gray. Somehow she colored it, I think.
No.
I shouldn't say that.
You think that came from a box?
Maybe. But
Nobody colored
that's
that
worth
really.
trying.
Looks pretty natural to me.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty good though.
Mhm.
I would like to show y'all another trick
Okay.
if
We'll-
you don't already know it.
Oh,
We
before
like
you
tricks.
go on, so we've set up this layer, the texture layer, and we've done the apply image settings. And then what was the deal with is that the one that goes to linear light or?
Yes, the texture layer, if
Mhm.
you had it in just normal, it would look like that.
Right.
And the weird thing is you can see the texture if you really zoom in.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how it separated all
Hmm.
the texture in the image. You've got the grain of the image, you've got the eyelashes, the hair, all the texture in the image is in that top layer.
Mhm.
So I don't know why linear light works to make the color shine through. Don't understand how that works at all. It does not make sense to me. I just know how to manipulate with it.
Know how to work
Yeah.
with it. Mhm.
No,
Great.
I wish I could explain that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we could keep you all night with this, Melissa.
Well, I do want to show y'all one other neat trick that's kind of
Sure.
saved me a few times. So I have the background layer and I've made another copy. I haven't done anything weird to this copy, but I am going to select an area of my image and hit transform distort. This has saved me so many times, y'all.
Mhm.
And just stretch my background out.
Yeah.
There are times when I'm trying to get rid of something on the side, and if I can just pull it out, I can get rid of it or extend a background out. Like if I had a white background behind her, but she was standing away from my white paper background and I have studio on either side, what I can do is I can extend the white paper background and just get rid of all the studio stuff. Y'all
Huh.
probably already knew that trick, but I just learned that trick last year and it has saved me hours of touching up stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a great
Yes.
trick. The only thing you have to be careful of is sometimes you can see the seam of where it happened, because
Mhm.
sometimes it'll actually pull the image away a little bit. So you have to be careful with that sometimes and cover up the seam. but a lot of times it works with no problem whatsoever.
Go through that one more time for us that are slow learners.
Nobody's a slow learner. It's weird. Okay. So I have my background layer and I have my copy, my layer 1. And I'm just going to the square selection tool here. And I'm selecting an area that I want to stretch and extend. So then I go to edit transform. I go to distort. And it gives me these little handles that I can pull on. And in this case, I'm trying to keep it straight as much as possible and just extend this out.
I'm moving. Oh, there it did. It moved in.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I have this picture of this old truck in a field, and it's a really cool old truck. It's covered with vines and things like that. But somebody very unaesthetically parked 2 cruddy looking vehicles on either side of this truck, right? So I'm sitting here trying to photograph this truck with all its glorious weeds. And this was the way I got rid of some of the junk on the sides of the truck, was I just, selected the area of weeds and extended it out until I could get rid of the other vehicles. It's
Neat.
awesome. Yep. And then you just hit select, deselect. And I recommend at that point that you flatten your layers.
Mhm.
Did y'all have any other questions? Feel good about it?
Do you want to go over how much to blur depending on the sensor pixel size?
How much to blur?
Based on how many pixels? Not everybody has a 50 megapixel camera like you have.
No. You just want to go by what looks right. You want to go to the point where you start to lose definite detail, but not too much detail. And even if you watch these tutorial videos that are on the internet, they're not going to give you a real specific number. They'll give you a number that they like, but I think it's up to everybody and what their taste is. I just went with 6.6 because that seems to work really well for me. When I went on her sweater, I could really easily tell how much blurring was too much blurring. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Didn't look right because it looked all flat and weird, and it looks a little flat and weird right now, but I'm
The
gonna
point
hide
is,
these.
directionally, you've got us in the ballpark, and as we play with this technique, we may
Yeah,
adjust those numbers a little bit ourselves, or might even handle one photo different than another one, but at least this puts us on the right path. Good
Mhm.
job. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it.
yeah, Melissa, thank you so much.
It's so
You're
interesting.
welcome.
Yeah. And so now I know what I'm going to be doing for the next several hours,
On the texture.
playing
Well,
around with it and try to figure out,
I'm
where.
gonna stop the recording now.